right, we're there. Phones. Oh, man. All right. Greetings. Welcome.
You took me wrong.
All right, so long time no see. We departed, and we didn't know that we weren't going to see each other again. So I hope that you found some refreshing in the 4-day break, right? I'm not gonna lie, I was excited on Wednesday afternoon when that email came out. Right? Like, okay, how about? Now I thought we were gonna hunker down for some actual water to come, and no water actually came, but. I see, Rowan. That's a leadership point for you. Okay, life, leadership. Some of y'all are going to run companies someday. You're going to be elected positions. We can criticize leaders all you want, but you probably wouldn't have made a different decision in that position, right? You probably would have looked at the data. You would have said, it appears this storm is bearing down on us. Hurricanes can be unpredictable, and they go the direction that the model doesn't say, which is what happened. But even though it seems like we're out of school for no reason, and I'm sure, did that hurt anyone's feelings? We're out of school for no reason? No, not at all. But your parents might have been like, and especially, I'll go with parents of youngers, okay, who's got to get childcare and maybe take a day off of work for themselves or whatever. I get it. It might have felt like we were out of school for no reason, but our leaders made the best decision they could with the information they had available at the time. It affected our football week. And how about that game on Saturday? Oh my God. Somebody now. How about that game? Like, all right, who was there? Raise your hand. Who was there? Who was there? I know I got some footballers. I saw Mia. All right, bear with me on this, because I want the juice as much as anyone else. I want the deets. So, hey, I'm trying to talk about a football game. I think we're gonna have a fun conversation here. Mia, what happened? Did you stay to the end, or did you cut out for homecoming?
I left after third
quarter. What did you hear?
I heard a lot of Mr. Swanson yelling at her.
On the TV?
No, while I was at the game.
Oh, okay. This is not true. This is not untrue. I was wondering if that came to you secondhand.
No.
Okay.
I've heard that.
That's a pretty solid setup for how the game actually ended in that regard.
Then I heard about the fight.
Okay.
My little brother likes football.
Okay. All right. Now, hey, I got some folks in here who have an interest in how that game ended up, and I'm going to baby step this conversation here. If you'll let me, I think we're going to have a learning point from it. You heard about the fight. What led to the fight? I'm asking Mia because she was there, but she left a little early.
The fact that the other team was trying to beat up on our guys all game, and it got to the breaking.
Okay, that was about what actually happened on the field of play, would you say? Did you hear anything?
I don't know.
Okay. Decide. What did you hear? Decide, were you there?
No. Aiden just told me.
Okay, Aiden just told Aiden Wright. I bet Aiden Wright's got a wonderful perspective on what happened. What happened on the field of play that kind of led to the scuffle at the end?
They said they pushed his head.
Okay, who's that? Who's that? The other team pushed Aiden's head down? Okay, so that's a scrapping. I'm talking about the actual football. Austin, were you there? Austin was there. I know Austin was there. He's number 4 in his jersey, number 1 in your heart. Austin was there. Were you on the field for that final goal line? Or you play defense, right? You play Wolfpack. Now, what? No. I'm baby stepping towards Knox. Knox is going to be my primary associate. What did you see? Now, I'm talking. Set it up for me. Okay, I know all the details, but you set it up for me. Try to describe it to those that weren't there. No. That actual last possession, we're up 28-22, 47 seconds left on the clock. Take it from there. Huh?
The ball wasn't snapped. They pushed Caleb.
The ball wasn't snapped. They pushed Caleb over. And so what should the call have been? If that's true, what should the call have been? If the ball wasn't snapped,
We're supposed to be outside.
should have been off. If all that data is true, it should have been offsides. Offsides on them helps you gain some yards, gets a first down, you take a couple more knees in the game. That's what should have been, perhaps. Now, Austin, where were you, physically speaking, where were you during that last little bit? On the sideline. You have a good view?
Yeah.
Did you have, or were there some bodies in front of you and the ball and, did you have a perfect view? Okay. Jason, where were you during that time? We'll be like Sherlock Holmes here, okay? I'm piecing together the story. You were on the sideline as well? Now, where you stand on the sideline matters. Were you to the far left, or were you pretty much lined up with the play? Closest to the play, okay. Between you and the ball was what? Between you and the ball was what? The defense, yeah, they used Lawrence players. Okay, that's my difficulty with the situation is that I didn't see everything maybe perfectly clearly because there was a lot of bodies between me and the ball. Now, I'm gonna get to my boy Knox here. Knox is in the realm of history. Okay, now let me make a classroom application. What type of source is Knox? Primary source. What's a primary source? Someone who is actually there. Keck Academy coming in clutch again. Okay, listen, I know it's a Saturday afternoon football game. I know there's a lot of emotions in this room in particular, and I kind of want the juice as much as anything else. But the application we can take from that, so we can always learn something. Knox, in this instance, is a primary source. Knox was there. Knox was as there as it gets. Knox, tell me what happened on 3rd and 12, 42 seconds to go. Tell me what happened.
We were supposed to get him to jump so we could get at least to where I don't gotta get the ball and step up and I get a safety.
Okay. So you were willing to take the safety if it came to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
They had 8 people top of Caleb. And when
Okay.
I said, they just sent everybody. Caleb hit me and I flew back. So they sent Caleb and our 2 guards flying back. If you go watch the video, everybody.
Which we're about to.
And then I'm just around, and I get up, and they talk about a touchdown. So I got mad.
Yeah, you did get mad. I'm curious. Hey, as Knox, as 10th grade appropriate as you can, what were you saying in this moment? What were you saying there? Golly gee, we didn't snap the ball?
Yeah.
Hard question for you, Knox. Did we snap the ball? Did we snap the ball? Okay. All right. They snapped Caleb. Here's the actual video. And listen, I want this to be a learning moment as much as it's about football in our school and all that. There was some fishy officiating the whole time, and I'm gonna land a point on that as well. So types of sources, right? I'm nerding out with history here. A primary source, that's what these fellas are. If you were there as an eyewitness, you're arguably a primary source. What I think we're gonna find in just a second is how we can't necessarily trust every eyewitness just because they were there. And I hope that what you'll realize is that every eyewitness to an event, whether it's a battle, whether it's a riot, whether it's a war, whether it's something related to the government, every eyewitness might not necessarily be telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because every eyewitness comes with a perspective of some sort. So just because you were there, down to the guy who is as close as it could be. Okay, I love that he's in the room right now. We're going to find that every eyewitness isn't necessarily a truth teller because of perspective. That doesn't make them a liar. That just means we all have a different perspective. So let's look at this real quick. Here they are lining up. Now it's a little bit grainy. Oh, it seems like they jumped the line. Hang on a second. Look at that arrow there.
Watch me. Everybody got to sit back.
Oh.
Molly move now.
So it's going to go on for a second here. It's going to reset. The GIF is going to reset in a second. Knox, I want you to watch the arrow. I don't know if you've analyzed it this close, and I got a question as much as anyone else. What am I seeing right there? What moves? Why does that color change? Did they snap the ball? I'm genuinely curious. Let's walk one more time.
If you did, man.
They basically called y'all.
Watch the arrow again. I'm going to stop it there.
Is that the ball or is that one of their players?
Because they have yellow pants, so
We'll watch the whole thing again. I think we're all analyzing in our own way right now. Watch where I put the arrow. I did this on purpose. Okay, it sure looks like they jumped. It sure looks like it. Wait a second. Mia, what do you think it is? What do you think it is?
I don't know what I think it is, and I would refer to
All right, Knox, what do you think it is?
Oh, it's nothing.
Just like this on camera. I ain't getting color. Listen, I looked at the video on Friday night when they posted it, around Saturday night, I looked at it Sunday. I decided that we could have a teach moment here. As it's football, I know, okay, it's Red Raiders. A lot of us are invested in it directly. You wear the jersey, you attend the games, you're all for it. And we want to lose a game. But I think we have a history point here as well. I don't know what that mark is. I don't. It's on video. Don't you think that if we catch something on video, we can have conclusive proof as to what it is? Y'all saw video and we can't decide what it is. Is it the ball? I don't know. Is it a shadow? I don't know. Is it a body part? I don't know. I genuinely, guys, I'm looking at a video and I don't know. Now take this. Who is responsible for truly getting that call right?
Refs.
The guys wearing black and white. You know why referees wear black and white? Because you're right and you're wrong. Okay, the call is this or a call is that. There's nothing in the middle. That's literally why referees wear black and white. Let's see how our referees did. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it?
Man, they don't.
They can't decide what's right.
See, like now, it's like 3 of them had their hands down and 1 of them had their.
And I like to point at these two jokers right here, bystanders. Bystanders in history are those who don't take a position on either side. You're going to have people from the north. You're going to have people from the south. You're going to have people who don't take a position on history, on a particular
So what is that?
issue.
What do those 2 hand signs mean?
This is a touchdown, which is 6 points for the other team. This is a safety, which means we got tackled in our own end zone. That's 2 points for the other team.
But he
Big difference. Notice the score at the time. A touchdown lets them tie it and gives them an extra kick, of course.
So why did they go with the touchdown?
Great question. Great question. Anthony, hang on to that, and I'm gonna give you my opinion, okay? And I hope you're seeing in this whole conversation, things are not as black and white as sometimes we assume, right? I'm using a football game as an example to help us see how muddy history can be sometimes. Now, my world historians, maybe you kind of remember where I'm going with this. I'm gonna get back to this in a second. I'm gonna go here. My world historians, maybe you can remember where I'm going with this. Maybe you saw this in Keck Academy because we share the slides. Every author has an intent. Every author is telling you something from their perspective. It might be to tell the truth, right? Truth bomb. Here it is. We hope that people are telling the truth. As we read journals, as we read letters, as we read official reports, we can hope that people have told the truth. I believe Knox has told me the truth from his perspective. Some authors, however, might be telling a lie. Old Pinocchio, right? Their nose grows when they talk because they're telling a lie. Some authors might be telling a half-truth. Might be true about this portion, but they want to make sure that they shape the message a little bit by telling you a lie about another portion of it. That's a half-truth. Exaggeration. Who's ever exaggerated something in their life? If you've ever caught a fish, I bet you've told the story with a little bit of an exaggeration. And then finally, here's a fuzzy one, big college word, obfuscation. Obfuscation is hiding the truth. I would argue it's on the shade of a lie, but it's a lie to purposefully, like Homer Simpson's doing, hide the truth. Play it in the background and hide the truth. This is what we have to deal with as historians. Right? I didn't intend to have this as a part of class today, but it gave itself to us with that little incident, with the instance on Saturday. This is what we have to do as historians. We have to determine an author's intent. Are they telling me the truth or are they telling me a lie? Is it somewhere in the middle? Are they exaggerating? Are they shading? And why? What would their motivation be to tell the truth, to tell a lie, or anything else in the middle? Knox, here's how I want to finish it for you. Anthony, you kind of led this to me. An author's intent or any primary source ever will always be skewed by something. One, what side you're on. Think about the language we just used. Us and them, right? We were referring to them. We were referring to us, our guys, us and them. You are always, try as you might to give a fair shake to any story or any perspective. You're going to have a side, and that's going to skew your perspective. The other thing is when you are analyzing it. Knox, I bet Saturday at 5:30 p.m. as you were stumbling off the homecoming pictures, you were pretty heated about the situation. Probably a difficult time, any football players, probably a difficult time to analyze the truth of the matter. Sunday, little time and distance from the situation, maybe became a little bit more clearer. You know what, I bet some of y'all are going to go to the grave with a particular story. We didn't snap the ball. Or maybe at your 10-year, 20-year high school reunion, maybe you're going to be like, yeah, we might snap the ball. I don't know. But when you're analyzing, it makes a difference. And then finally, an inherent bias. Anthony, you know where those referees were from? Jeff Davis. Those referees are from Jeff Davis.
Yeah, like the one over.
Try as they might to be black and white. Is Jeff Davis like that guy? They just don't. They just don't. Now, I'm not, hey, GHSA, I'm not making some big statement, but we all have some inherent bias. Now, I want to give you one more. One more of the biggest author's intent skewed factors of all time. Who's ever heard of Tom Brady and the Tuck Rule?
No
My sports folks. Knox doesn't know. Woo, boy, I get to teach you something today. I love this. I love when I get to teach y'all a chance. All right, who knows Tom Brady? Y'all know Tom Brady because he's 45 years old and he's still playing football, right? I grew up in Tom Brady's rookie year. Hey, I got to learn of Tom Brady with the rest of the sports world trying to figure out who this new young guy is. Tom Brady's first year was the year 2001. I know you guys weren't even alive. You weren't alive for September 11th, all that kind of stuff, right? Tom Brady's first football year is 2001. Does anybody know why Tom Brady became quarterback of the New England Patriots?
Because somebody got hurt.
Because somebody got hurt. That's right. Anybody paying attention to the Dallas Cowboys right now?
Yeah.
I think Dak Prescott better be concerned because Cooper Rush is about to Tom Brady him. That's a lot of words that I just said, but maybe it makes sense to you, right? Tom Brady becomes the starter because Drew Bledsoe got hurt. First round of the playoffs. The Patriots, you guys know them as a dynasty, right? You guys know them as the 6-time Super Bowl champions, Tom Brady, best of all time, all that kind of stuff, right? The GOAT. 2001, it's the Oakland Raiders that are the best football team in the league. The Patriots and the Raiders are playing each other in the first round. It's a snowy game. It's a really snowy game in Foxborough. I guess the Raiders, for whatever reason, they had a road game, but they were one of the dominant teams in the league. Okay? They're playing in Foxborough. They're playing in Massachusetts. It's snowy. It's not a very high-scoring game. You guys are playing in the rain, right? When it's a rainy game, you run a lot. Long story short, fast forward a whole lot here, comes down to a single play in the game where Tom Brady seems to have fumbled the football, and the football was recovered by Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson, future Hall of Famer, he's at the peak of his career. He's looking for a Super Bowl ring. I don't think he ever wins one. Maybe he wins one with the Packers. He's looking for some legacy, okay? He thinks he strip sacks Tom Brady. He thinks he recovers a fumble. The call on the field is incomplete forward pass. It comes down to a literal whole brand new rule being written into the NFL called the tuck rule. And the rule is that if you are tucking the ball back into your chest as you drop it, it's not a fumble, it's an incomplete pass. The rule was written because of Tom Brady. I want you now, at the time, Tom Brady and the Patriots, they go on to win the playoff game. They go on to win the first Super Bowl. If Tom Brady loses that playoff game, he probably doesn't come back as a starter. Drew Bledsoe probably gets his starting spot back. If Drew Bledsoe gets his starting spot back, what happens to Tom Brady? He's probably not the Tom Brady that you know today that got thumped by Patrick Mahomes on TV last night. Right? He probably doesn't go on to be the Tom Brady that you guys know. Legacies change on this one play. Charles Woodson, he loses the game instead of wins the game. Okay, he doesn't go on to the Super Bowl in that particular year, and I can't remember if he ever wins one or not. I want you to see what Tom Brady says about the tuck rule 20 years later. Let's see. What do you think he's gonna say, Knox?
He fumbled.
Let's find out.
Now I do what I want.
First of all, thank you for correctly ruling this on the field. I appreciate you getting it on.
The actual play, what's that look like to you?
I think it's safe to say this will be talked about quite a bit. The incomplete pass when it happened, and the incomplete pass 20 years.
He's holding his line.
Tough pro game against the Raiders. Fumble. Or in this case, fumble. Fumble. No.
So 20 years later, he does this ESPN documentary with Charles Woodson, and he admits, actually, this is on a TikTok. There was a TikTok trend that said, tell me a truth that you've never told anyone else before. And he says what you just saw there. He goes, the tuck rule, looks around, kind of silly, making sure no one's listening. It might have been a fumble. For 20 years, he carried a truth that he didn't necessarily say out loud until his legacy was secured. So this is what I give to you. What we see as a surface level, whether it's the Civil War and slavery, whether it's the Declaration of Independence, whether it's the Civil Rights Movement, whether it's the global war on terrorism, whatever we see on a surface value, y'all, there's always more. There's always more to it. So I go off on that little tangent, using football as an example, just to try to get you guys to see that every author has an intent, and there's more to a story than you can ever, there's always more to a story. Knox, I want to finish out with this. My Warriors in the room, all right? My footballers in the room. Let me get back to where I wanted to be. This is going to be a perfect segue into our class today. Now, we're going to pause for the bathroom, but a perfect segue to our class today. We're going to talk about Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, 26th President of the United States. Remember, we haven't talked about any presidents yet. He's the first president of a progressive era that we're actually going to spend some time talking about. Teddy Roosevelt has this quote. He says this. Hear me now. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here's the heart of it. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. This is called his man in the arena quote. Y'all, it don't matter what happened out there. It don't matter what all the naysayers might say about one play. Y'all are the ones in the trenches. Y'all are the ones fighting. Y'all are the ones putting your blood and your sweat out there. There's always going to be a critic in the stands. There's always going to be an additional referee in the stands. Me and knows I'm one of them, right? There's always going to be a coach in the stand. Hey, coach, run your play. It's the man in the arena that counts. And I'm looking at the four of you that wear a jersey in this room, for the football team in particular. You're the man in the arena. Appreciate the battle that y'all did on Saturday. And I hope you kind of gained something out of our little football learning lesson there. All right, pause for that. Head to the bathroom. Hope it made sense to you. When we come back, we're talking about Teddy Roosevelt.
Let me get some cuz.
See my point together right there, trying to fight. He got charged. I'll pick him up. Okay, clear, part two.
Come on, come on, come on. Find a word about baseball bat, my
Not really, Steve. If you can hear my phone line in the house.
Where that sledgehammer that we
That's what it sounded like, bro.
That's on video too. I'm sleeping with on video. Yes, right here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Girl, I'm gonna give us one more look at it because this is this kind of captures Knox and all his glory of the moment too. Take it with you. All right, don't make me regret being off track. One more. Here we go. Ready for it?
The other center. The other center.
Something happened right there.
That's a yellow. Because Caleb could not see that ball.
You got two referees doing two different things.
They were not paying attention to that one.
Look at our boy Knox. Knox, narrate for me.
I was so sad.
Touchdown.
I was so mad.
Coach said, I'm gonna stay here till you throw a flag, by the way.
He do it.
Tristan's like,
Tristan, I'm gonna
He shot a low too.
Why didn't they go?
A lot of confusion going on here. What in the world, man?
hey, that's your dad,
They
right?
call it touchdown for East Lawn.
What in the world, man?
They call it touchdown for East Lawn.
It doesn't always sound like that.
I'm so mad.
All right. So that was a long opener. Pull out these. This is where we are, okay? Where we left off last week. This is where we'll be. This is where we'll be. So it's these notes stapled together. Opening screen from today was reminding you what I'm going to take up on Wednesday. Does anybody need any of these notes? Like you weren't here? Okay.
I don't mental health. That's what happened.
This right here. It starts with the robber barons on the front. But Allison was gone and she had them. So yeah. We've had these for 2 days. All right. You've already written through the robber barons. Now we're moving on to the second staple page.
Are we only doing that one, or are we doing both of them? We did both.
We are on imperialism, aka expansionism. All right.
Are these the only notes?
So the notes to turn in on Wednesday.
Oh.
Go ahead and do this now. It's going to be the 3 I's, but I haven't taken that yet. Indians, immigrants, and inventions. This one, and the study guide scavenger hunt. Right? I know I like to pick things up on Friday. Obviously, we weren't here on Friday. I also don't like to pick things up before tests. So that's why I'm going to take these 3 on test day. That make sense? You keep it through the test, these 3 on test day. All right, all of that said, we do have some work to do today, so let's get to it. May introduce you to the first president we talked about in this era, our boy, Teddy Roosevelt. Just read you his man in the arena quote. Pretty powerful quote. A lot of leaders like to think about that. Whenever you're getting criticism, and listen, he got some criticism in his life. A lot of leaders like to think about, hey, it's not the critic that counts, but the man in the arena. To set the stage for the whole era, going to throw out a couple of words at you, and then we're going to see how Teddy Roosevelt dealt with both of these words. So first, imperialism, or a little bit more plain speak would be AKA expansionism. Break that word in half, and what do you get? Expansion. So if our national policy is expansionism, what do you think we're focused on doing? Expanding where? Land. Yes, the perspective is land. So expansionism, write this down, is the idea that the U.S. should acquire lands in other parts of the world. Think about it. Our whole perspective up to this point has been our borders. Let's take care of ourselves. We've even thrown down lines like the Monroe Doctrine that says, hey, Europe, you stay over there, we'll stay over here. Why do you think now, at this point in our history, we're going to start choosing to expand? What can we gain from expansion?
Money.
Could potentially gain more land and territories. Timothy? Trade is going to be a huge one. And as we're growing as a country, okay, I want you to think about, we've been an infant, we've been a toddler, we've been a teenager. Now we're kind of into our adult years as a country. What do we kind of want to flex? Military power, that's right. So these are reasons for expanding and acquiring lands in other parts of the world. Look at the picture there, and Paige, who's kind of central to the picture? What character, what figure is central in that picture? Look at what he's holding. What type
America, I mean the U.S., the flag.
An American, and by holding a gun, what do you think his job is?
Army.
Soldier, yeah. So it's talking about sending our military to other places around the world. Now, here's another sentence for you. Write this down. We had this belief, and some may agree with it. Some may say, wow, that's really egotistical. But the belief was that America has a duty to spread our superior way of life around the world. Democracy is better than the way you live, so we're going to bring it to you. Capitalism is better than the way you live, we're going to bring it to you. Freedom, who doesn't want freedom? We're going to bring it to you. Now, what that neglects is maybe other people were fine how they were living. Maybe they liked the tribal lifestyle. Maybe they were sharing socialist, they were socially sharing their goods and their services, and they're fine with that. But the American attitude is, by gosh, we're better than the rest of y'all, so we have a duty to spread our way of life around the world. That is another reason why we wanted to expand all around the world. Not that one. That's the wrong one. That's a bad one to throw away. Not that one. That's a bad one to throw away.
I already got extra. I got extra. All I need is
We have
the
to
immigrants
do.
welcome in there?
Say that again.
I mean, the natives,
The natives, like
were they
native,
welcome in there?
like Indians, Native Americans. Oh, you mean the natives of the particular layers? Great question. Tyra said, okay, so we expand and we have acquired a new territory. What about the people that already live there? It's a great question, and we're going to talk about some of the difficulties with acquiring new land.
More natives getting kicked off their land?
More natives getting kicked off their land. Paige is picking up on a theme here. All right, one more for you. I know it's a big block. The purpose of expansionism was to gain landing areas for kind of the things you already said. Military bases, trade, and just power in general. I want you to think about, I know you guys know we went to the moon, we put our flag on the moon. Right? When we planted our flag on the moon, did we claim the moon for America? I mean, not really the whole moon, but it's kind of a powerful statement to plant your flag somewhere, right? Look at the picture on the screen. I want you to think of it as an illustration of planting our flag all around the world. If we can have an air base in a faraway country, we can land an airplane and we can do trade. If we can have a port in a faraway country, we can put our ships there, we can do trade, we can do military. So think of it as trying to have a landing spot, a landing area all around the world. That was the purpose of this expansionism. I think I see a couple.
Wasn't that the? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Wasn't that the point in the Panama Canal though, so they could have more trading systems, so it'd be easier for the boats to get in instead of having to make the trip all the way around?
You're saying have many ports, that means you don't have to do as much traveling? Yeah, that was part of the theory. Well, what if that port is in Italy and Italy doesn't really think you deserve to be there? What now? So we kind of had to flex ourselves into other countries. I'm about to show you a picture of just how widespread the U.S. military is today. Before I do that, check out this picture. Now, I'm not going to analyze every block, but I'll tell you the far left, the block down below says 1783. Roll it through your brain. What was going on in 1783? Not quite Jamestown, a little after that. Good. The 1783 was the end of the Revolutionary War. Remember, hear me on the review here. Remember, the whole room was reviewed. 1776 was the Declaration of Independence. But 1783, that's the beginning of our country. At the beginning of a baby's life, what do we call it? An infant. So our country was in its infancy. Now, I'm not going to walk us along every other year here, but we become an adolescent, we become a young adult, we grow into like midlife and bring it all the way to 1899. That's where we are in the story of us, okay? We're at 1899. How does Uncle Sam look in 1899? A little bit of fat, right? A little bit bloated. What is he fat on? Let me get some other participation. Felix, what do you think he's fat on? What is he fat with? It's kind of a hard phrase to say. Greed, nationalism. What do you think he has acquired all this time? About 200 or so years.
Probably money.
Bunch of land and money. Okay, I'm hearing it from across the room, right? I'm trying to get participation from everybody. Yeah, we got fat and bloated with all the stuff we've acquired. Under his armpit, first block pointed out there's a boat. That's because we got a fleet now. We got a navy that can go all around the world. So we've gone from infancy, I'm going to try not to break my TV here. We've gone from infancy to a very, very, very portly gentleman in a little over 100 years. This is the story of us up to 1899. Well, this is where we find ourselves. This is the present day. Where do we not, where do we have representation in the world? Where do we have the heaviest representation?
In Europe.
Europe, for sure. What about Africa?
Yes.
Got a lot of dots in Africa. Now, not large bases, and if you look at the key, you can see that yellow got some large bases.
Japan.
So we don't have a lot of large bases in Africa, but we got a lot of presence. Where else?
Japan.
Absolutely. We have huge bases in Japan. I haven't been there personally, but there's a lot of military in Japan. Where do we not have representation? Russia and
China.
China. There it is.
And
Russia and China.
And North Korea.
Okay, North Korea is correct, absolutely. So you can see where we have relations around the world, and you can see where we don't have relations around the world. This is expansionism, okay? This is the idea of spreading out around the world, sharing American values, having landing bases for trade and the military. This is the present day. The opposite of that, what would be the opposite of expanding all around the world? Isolationism. It's on your screen, and it's also your next word. So I don't want you to think that every American was for this expansionism. It's one side of thinking. The other side of thinking is, hey, don't we have a lot of problems in our house? Shouldn't we take care of the things within our borders? You hear this a lot today, and sometimes the phrase is America first. Shouldn't we take care of ourselves before we go around the rest of the world? So this was the alternate philosophy at the time, the idea that the U.S. should protect its own land, limit interactions with other nations. Instead of putting ourselves out there, let's make sure we're good in our household first. And here's another impact, limit immigration. We're cool if you're like, sometimes we want immigrants to come and work on the railroad. Sometimes we want immigrants for cheap labor in the factories. But too many immigrants is going to start to cause problems. So a nativist or an isolationist would say, hey, we should probably limit immigration. The blend of those two is probably what is ideal. Put ourselves out there in the world some, not too much, not too little, some. Make sure that we're protected at home also, and that kind of balances both philosophies. Unfortunately, there's always kind of a polarization for this side, for that side. Gets back to the us and the them. Not everybody can agree, all that kind of stuff. So these are the two overarching philosophies in the world at the time. Expansionism, aka imperialism, isolationism, aka nativism. Take that word, native, like our homeland. That's why it's connected to isolationism. Look at the posters, the pictures / posters. Keep us out of war, be neutral. It says, let's not worry about European affairs. Let's take care of our household first. Some people are for that. They say, why would my son go overseas when we got enough issues at home we need to take care of? Some people still carry that today. A lot of people had struggles with, why are we fighting in Afghanistan or in Iraq? How is that protecting us in Georgia or Oklahoma as I was growing up? So you can see the two philosophies. Well, let's talk about the president. To understand Theodore Roosevelt, we got to understand the president before him. So he's not on our wall, on our president's wall. You can see Theodore Roosevelt only. But the man who comes before him is William McKinley. William McKinley, he was president for just 4 years, one term. He was a Republican, and he is seen as the first progressive president. He is the first president that went hands-on. The laissez-faire attitude, that was hands-off, going to let big business do what they do. Well, McKinley, he was not full-on regulations, but he was more hands-on than his predecessors. So all those guys that have been getting rich by exploiting laborers, McKinley was kind of the first president to start regulating business a little bit more. A little bit more about him. He's the last Civil War veteran to be president, so it's kind of the changing of an era. He's the last one of his era, of his age group, to be elected president. And he's basically seen as a bridge between pro-business and caring for workers. He does oppose monopolies, and he's going to start to take them on with legislation as well. He is an imperialist, okay? Of the two philosophies I just talked about, he is an imperialist. He believes in planting the flag all over the world, and that's going to lead to a couple of things that we need to talk about. His Secretary of State writes something called the Open Door Notes. Now, this is not on your notes. This is just setting the stage, okay? Secretary of State John Hay writes something called the Open Door Notes, and he's referring to trade with China. He says we need to leave the door open, and we need to do trade with China. If we close off that market, we will lose a significant amount of trade opportunity. So the Open Door Notes, that is a significant part of his philosophy. So he's not an at-home guy. He's a let's go out and start trading with other countries. And his imperialist policies also lead to the Spanish-American War, which is on your notes. So let's talk about it. Spanish-American War. First of all, it's the U.S. versus Spain. I know there's the language Spanish, and that is spoken in Mexico. This is not a U.S. versus Mexico thing. But it's also not us fighting in the country of Spain. We are fighting Spanish territories in the Caribbean and some in the Pacific Island as well. So Cuba and a couple of Pacific Island nations. This is the heart of the Spanish-American War. Anthony?
I still think they got that wrong.
You still think, how'd they get that wrong?
Because Cuba doesn't even speak.
Well, at the time, it was a Spanish holding. Okay, it belonged to the country Spain. The Spain that you know today is pretty small, but at the time, just like Britain had itself spread all out the world, at the time, Spain had itself spread out all over the world. They do speak Spanish. They habla español.
No, but it's not their main. It's mainly that.
There's different dialect.
And it's not really Spanish. It's like, what's that stuff?
We'll ask Senora Erickson about that. We'll see if she agrees or disagrees. So, to Anthony's point, I get it. There's a bunch of dialects of Spanish. In our class, we're going to refer to this as the Spanish-American War, right? We just at least got to know that much. Remember the Maine becomes a rallying cry for the Spanish-American War. Now, can you think of another remember that we've already had? Jack, can you remember something? Remember the? Pretty small, but we talked about it related to Texas. Remember the?
Texans.
Alamo. Remember the Alamo? Okay, that was one battle we talked about already. In the future, you know that we're going to remember Pearl Harbor. And then really in the present day, we talked about it on the anniversary day, we remember September 11th. So remember is a really powerful word in history, and it's also a rallying cry, right? If someone did wrong to you, they attacked your people and we were innocent, if you remember that event, that's supposed to rally you to wanting to wage war or fight war. And in this case, it does lead us to the Spanish-American War. Here's a picture of the USS Maine. Okay, now it's not a photograph, it's a painting, of course. Looking at the photograph, what stands out to you?
There's people flying.
What, Knox, what'd you say?
People flying.
People flying, and Lakira said the same. That is exactly what stands out to me, is the people flying. Here's the story of the USS Maine. It was sent to Cuba to protect American interests. This is not on your notes, just hear me. Protect American interests. Here's the thing about the Navy. Now, you know I'm an Army guy, right? You know I like to pick at the Navy. In terms of the college I went to, we were always playing the Naval Academy in sports, so I like to say be Navy. Here's the thing about a Navy. You got to have a Navy to not need a Navy. If you have a good Navy, you probably don't ever need to use it because nobody wants to fight you. But as soon as you don't have a good Navy, what are you going to need? You're going to need a Navy. So this is what the USS Maine was doing. It went to Cuba to just be present. If it is there, people are like, ooh, that warship is out in the water, so we're not going to start any funny business. Well, while it was ported in Havana Harbor, it blows up. Here's what's fishy about that. To this day, history doesn't exactly know what happened. It could have been sabotage. It could have been some Spanish fighters blowing up the ship, or most likely, it was American sailors who were messing around in the ammo room and accidentally ignited a charge and blew up their own ship. We really don't know. Like, honestly, to this day, all the evidence, we really don't know. But if you want to justify going to war, Knox, which version are you going to take? Which version are you going to tell the American public?
That the Spanish did it
They did it to us is exactly right. And that's exactly the story that gets told through something that is known as yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is sensational writing, sensational headlines. Now, unfortunately, we see that a lot today, right? Instead of a true statement of whatever the fact is, there's a sensational headline. It's either pro-Republican or pro-Democrat or whatever, right? Well, at the time, newspapers were what was sold. These days, what's the last time you picked up a newspaper? Anybody? Like, you haven't picked up a newspaper. But what you do consume is social media, television, advertisements that come on all those platforms, right? So these journalists would make sensational headlines. You might call, you know what we call it today? What is it called when they try to get you to click on the article? They give you just a little tease. Clickbait. These headlines are basically clickbait to try to sell the newspapers. Here's the power of the media. These sensational headlines and the fact that the media kept being like, remember the Maine, they did it to us, literally took us to war. So here's the heart of the Spanish-American War, U.S. versus Spain, Cuba, Pacific Ocean. Here's an extra featuring, is that how the kids say it? Like Kesha featuring Pitbull or whatever, right? On a record. Featuring Colonel Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. Now look at this picture. This is Colonel Teddy Roosevelt. Look at his outfit. Look at my outfit. What am I wearing today? I'm wearing this whip hoodie that's supposed to look like Theodore Roosevelt's uniform, right? I am a Rough Rider. Theodore Roosevelt, the Colonel. Let me introduce you to the military man. Now, I genuinely believe that Theodore Roosevelt wanted to serve his country. I also believe that Theodore Roosevelt knows if you get famous in the military, what can you do next? Anything you want, or i.e. run for president. We've already looked at famous military leaders who then go into politics. The Christian, who was one of them? Andrew Jackson, yeah. Now, George Washington, I would hear that as well. But hey, I got a lot of names in my head, and I forget yours half the time. Christians just said Andrew Jackson because what battle did he fight? Allison, you remember which battle? Which battle did Andrew Jackson fight in?
New Orleans.
In Battle of
New
Orleans, right? From that battle, he runs for president. All right, that was review. Same thing happens with Theodore Roosevelt here. He gets famous during this war, and of course, we know that leads him to the presidency. Now, at the time, here's how he does it. It's kind of interesting. At the time, he was assistant secretary of the Navy. That's a desk job, all right? That's a guy that does paperwork, suit and tie, boring. He resigns his job. And what he does, you would not be able to do today. But he went and recruited his own battalion of cavalry. He said, hey, come join me. Bring your horse, bring your gun. We're going to go to Cuba. We're going to fight those Spaniards, and we're going to serve our country. He literally raised his own army force. You can't do that today. Today you got to join Spaniards.
Wait. You just said you can't do that. So you're telling me that what about in the army when you have say you went into war with these guys?
Today, yeah, but you're in the army. Like
I know, but then the government's like
it would be like this, Anthony. It'd be like this. My name's Swanson, so I'm going to start a group called the Swashbucklers. We're Swanson Swashbucklers. Who's joining me? Who's joining me? Oh, come on, boys. Who's joining me? Right? Travion's in Swanson Swashbucklers. Hey, Travion, you ready to go to war? We're going to Afghanistan right now. Anthony, can I do that today?
No.
I can't make my own unit.
I thought you meant you can't have the same people.
Oh, no. Well, I'm saying you can't make your own unit.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He said, hey, follow me. And guess what? A lot of people did. This is his group. This is his group called the Rough Riders. Now, this is a real photograph. You can see Teddy Roosevelt in the middle of it, right? He's got his mustache. He's always famous with his mustache. When you look at this group above us, what kind of person do you see?
I see a white person right now.
I think honestly, I think they're all white. What's that? Black people were allowed in the army, but in their own unit. So we're not integrated yet at this time. So there's a good point to say that they are all Caucasian. Okay, they're all white people. But looking at the dudes, what type of fella do you see?
Some skinny people.
I see some rough and tumble country boys. Right? I see some dudes that are probably gonna mess up. Yeah, if you're trying to fight back against them, I don't know. I think you're gonna lose. Okay, that's a good crowd of fighters right there. It's called the Rough Riders. Now they're famous for attacking on horseback. That's what cavalry is. You're on horses, and they fight a battle called the Battle of San Juan Hill. That's where Teddy Roosevelt gets famous. He literally starts his own unit. He fights one big battle, and from that, he has the legacy that is ultimately going to carry him to the presidency. A little bit more about Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt, the colonel, one, he was an avid reader. I want to give that to you. Leaders are readers, and a lot of times readers are leaders. Teddy Roosevelt was an avid reader. He was an outdoorsman. We're going to see that play out in his presidency as well. So just like his Rough Riders, you know, he was a guy who was familiar with hard work. He had rough hands. He could work the land. He was not immune to personal hardship. Somebody, let me choose here. Travion, can you read from back there? I know your eyes are down.
Me.
Lexi, can you read from back there? Look at that journal page right there. What is written on that journal page?
The light has
Thanks, Lexi. Lexi, what you got? The light has gone out of my life. February 14th, 1884. This is his personal journal entry. On this day, same day, mother and first wife died of disease. Separate incidences, okay? They weren't connected or anything like that. But his mother, who was very important to him, his first wife, who was very important to him, they die on the same day. So I give that to you to say that a lot of these leaders we've talked about, they're not immune to hardship. The Lincolns lost children while he was president. We've seen a lot of people have personal tragedy, and they still rise to the occasion.
What president actually made it to their 4 years and like never died? Like, 'cause usually they always die right after.
A lot of it.
Oh, Anthony has a great point, and I'm going to pause to address Anthony's point. He's saying that the job is really hard. And because the job is really hard, a lot of presidents die probably within a decade after they leave the job, right? Is that what you're saying, more or less? So who did you just say? Obama has been out of office for 6 years. And he got gray. He got gray fast. Now, I don't think he's on the brink of death, but he got old pretty fast. Here, how about this? This weekend, okay, this day in history. Did anybody look at my Google Classroom post?
Yeah.
I sort of did.
This weekend, who had a birthday?
I got that.
I can't remember the name.
Smells like cha.
I saw it. It's Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter, yeah. Mia said it,
Yeah.
Paige was getting it, not Jimmy Carter. Anthony, since you asked the question, I'm telling you here. Jimmy Carter turned 98 years old. Jimmy Carter has been out of office for 42 years. So Jimmy Carter is an example of a president who has lived a long time after his term. But Anthony, you're right. A lot of presidents, it's really hard on them. I mean, they get gray, they get tired, and they die. Huh?
He's still alive.
He had a birthday this past weekend.
I thought he died.
Yeah.
You said Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy is a nickname for James. Right? Yeah, Jimmy's a nickname for James.
Wait,
So these are all their formal
He was
names.
what number president was he?
Jimmy Carter.
What number?
It's just like Dave,
What number
or
39?
Cootie, or Twerp, or all the nicknames don't give each other. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Cootie and Twerp are the most weirdest things.
Hey, Anthony, does that make sense? I wanted to address your question since you brought it up, right? All right, moving on. These guys aren't immune to personal hardship. So he had personal hardship in his life. And finally, here's a bonus for you. Roosevelt, that's the name we're going to hear again, right? Franklin Roosevelt was also president. This guy, Theodore Roosevelt, was fifth cousins to Franklin Roosevelt. He was also, yes, they're inbred, he was also niece to Eleanor Roosevelt. So that means that Eleanor and Franklin were related by bloodline. Kind of distant, but Eleanor and Franklin were distant cousins to each other. So there is a connection there. There's kind of a duo connection there to both of them. All right, let me finish it up here. I thought I'd get that one. All right, so write this down under Spanish American. Here's how it finishes up, okay? A lot of fighting. It lasts for 4 years, 1898 to 1902. In the end, the United States wins, okay? If you want to call it a win, the U.S. wins. And from winning, we get the Philippine Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, and Cuba. Looking at this map here, you can see the United States in pink. And look at these boxes. This is where all of our new territories are. Guys, this is imperialism. As far spread out as these islands are, this is going around the world and fighting. And I bet it's really hard for some farmer from Mississippi to understand why his son had to go to the Philippines. I bet it's really hard for a banker from New York City to wonder why his son died in Guam. Why in the world are we fighting half an ocean away if it doesn't affect me at home? That is someone who would say, let's take care of ourselves first. That's a nativist. But an imperialist says, ha-ha, Now we have a holding in the Philippines. Now we have a holding in Guam. We have gained Cuba. We have gained Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico and Guam, those are U.S. territories to this day. Cuba did not become a territory. It was called a protectorate, which means that the United States helped it get on its own feet. But of course, today we kind of have a real tricky relationship with Cuba. It's not a territory. And the Philippines, I'm not going to tell you about the Philippines yet, so I'm not going to spoil my story.
Wait.
There.
I keep going off topic.
Okay, what you got?
Didn't Cuba have like bombs that were gonna get?
Yes, we are going to talk about Cuba again. It might have been good for us to take on Cuba at this point. It might have been good for us to take it as a territory, but we didn't. Okay, that's not what the war was about. And Cuba is going to give us trouble in the future. It definitely is. Secretary of State John Hay, he calls this war a splendid little war. Do you think that war is ever splendid? What would William Tecumseh Sherman have to say about that?
It was not good.
Yeah, well, what did he say about war?
No.
War is
Hell.
hell. War is hell. So a splendid little war, that's what guys at desks say. Okay, soldiers in the field, they don't ever say, it's a splendid little war, let's go have a dollop of tea today. All right, no such thing. War is hell. But in the end, so this is what I've already said, Spain gives up Puerto Rico and Guam. The Philippines. We did a lot of fighting in the Philippines. We actually had to buy it. Even though we were fighting, and in war, sometimes you gain territory by fighting, Spain basically said, hey, listen, we'll stop fighting if you agree to buy it from us, and that's what we do. We buy it for $20 million. So were we fighting over it? Yeah, a little bit, but in the end, we made a purchase of it. So that's the Philippines.
We still own
well, guess what happens next? Guess what happens next? President McKinley's assassinated.
I know it.
Yeah, McKinley is assassinated. Here's the story of that. Now, I know I went all in on John Wilkes Booth. I'm not going all in on this story. But here's what's hard for you guys to understand. He didn't have any Secret Service. There was still no protection for the president. Secret Service is going to come after this, finally, but he had no Secret Service up to this point. So here's what he's doing. He's shaking hands. He's meeting his people, right? He's just working the road line, right? Hey, vote for me next time that you vote. When a disgruntled young socialist anarchist comes up to him, he has a drape over his right hand. So McKinley, it's a gun. He's got a gun draped over it with a cloth draped over his right hand. McKinley thinks that it's like his arm's in a sling. So he actually does a very kind thing. He reaches out with his left hand to shake. You ever do a left hand shake? It's a little awkward.
Yeah.
You're like, oh yeah, right, whatever. This guy, instead of shaking his hand, shoots twice. Once in his stomach, once in his lung. He does not die from the gunshot wounds, but he does die 8 days later. He dies 8 days later of gangrene. Who knows what gangrene is? Yeah, the infection. Basically, modern medicine would have saved his life. But at the time, they could not locate the bullet. They could not dig it out. And because it was in his body, it got infected. He dies of the infection. So this is how McKinley dies. That, of course, is unfortunate, right? We never want someone to die. From this comes the creation of the Secret Service. And from this, Theodore Roosevelt becomes president. Yeah, what's Yes, real big. Theodore is his given name, but he is. So let me tell you about Theodore Roosevelt, the politician now. Here's how he rose to power. Now he becomes president after McKinley's shot. And this is extra for you, okay? I'm just telling you a story. He's first the governor of New York. He's a Republican, okay? The party of Lincoln. In New York's kind of riddled with corruption. So they say, hey, we know who can fix this, Teddy Roosevelt. So he gets elected governor as a Republican from the state of New York. As governor, he is an aggressive, progressive reformer. And you're not going to forget that because it rhymes, right? We always remember things that rhyme. He's an aggressive, progressive reformer. Actually, he's too aggressive for the Republicans. They start to not like him. So because they didn't like how aggressive he was, they wanted to get rid of him. How do you get rid of a politician?
Shoot him.
Yeah, but that's not what they're going to do to their own guy.
Rumors.
Rumors and get him discredited. I haven't heard that one before.
Just
I
ruin
heard
his
that's good.
reputation.
What's that?
Ruin the reputation.
Ruin their reputation. I heard impeachment and first clause. That's valid. How about this? He was. You guys are delicious little thinkers over here.
Affairs.
You know how you really get rid of a politician? You put him into a lame position. Do you know what the least powerful position in U.S. politics is?
Vice president.
Say it again.
Vice
The
president.
vice presidency. You looking at my notes? The vice president.
Smart.
Yeah, I know we think it's a powerful position because it's one step away from the president, but the vice president is an extremely unpowerful position. So the Republicans said, hey, we know how to get rid of Teddy Roosevelt, just make him the vice president. He becomes the vice president, and when McKinley gets shot, what happens? Yeah, so plot twist, joke's on them. He is now an aggressive, progressive president. So he's the VP turned VP. He's actually the youngest man to ever be president, age 42. So I still got a chance, I suppose, to be a younger president than that. But he is the youngest man to ever be president. And what we're going to talk about today are his progressive policies, known as the Square Deal. And it's 3 parts, and they all start with C. So he would make a very good Baptist preacher because he's going to put together a 3-part sermon, and all of his main points are going to start with the same letter, which are going to be C. So I'll hit Philippine American in just a second. Flip to the next page. We're talking about Teddy Roosevelt. I know you were looking at Philippine American. We're on the back page of Teddy Roosevelt for now. And I'm going to tell you about the Square Deal and his 3-part deal with C. So your question there, how does he become president? You should write down because McKinley was shot, because McKinley was assassinated. And here's his 3-part deal. So the first C is conservation. Break that word apart. What word do you have? Conserve. Now looking at the picture, what do you see?
Nature.
A bunch of nature. So what do you think the conservation movement is?
To keep the
National parks, land, water, and just like unadulterated territory. Yes. Here's a movement that put laws in place to protect natural resources, specifically forest, water, natural reserves. It helps create a bunch of tourist places that you would know today, like national parks, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and many more. Not every single national park came through Teddy Roosevelt, but he was definitely a champion of the National Park Service. The reason for this is because we were so cramped in the East. We were industrializing in the East, factories. Now we got the railroad taking us out west. Teddy Roosevelt began to realize if we don't stop ourselves, we are going to build on all of that natural beauty. Once we build on all that natural beauty, can we ever go backwards? Can we ever regain the lakes, the mountains, the plains, the geysers, the plateau, all that? No. So he says, I want to, now building is good. Okay, I'm for business, but I also want to protect the land. And a big part of that is the National Parks Service. So I think I'll give a couple of you a chance to continue writing this down. Conservation is the first of the 3 C's. It's called a square deal, right? I'm gonna give you Americans a square deal. First part is conservation.
Yeah, why do we call it a square deal when no one has green?
That's as I say that out loud, that's a fair point. I don't know. Square would kind of imply 4, wouldn't it? I think it's saying if I'm giving you a fair shot, I'm giving you a square deal, right? I'm giving you a square deal means it's all good. Yeah, that's a fair question. I'll find out that answer. Well, I was going to tell you a story, but some of y'all are still writing. I'll tell you a story. So I visited a handful of national parks. I bet a lot of you have, right? I know Miss Allison Lee and Harrison, they went and visited Yosemite last summer. So national parks. You ever seen this logo before? Yeah. There's a lot of national parks.
That's the one in Utah.
Well, that logo is for all national parks. But yeah, there's definitely national parks in Utah. When we say national park, a lot of times we think National Park Ranger. This is a ranger. His name is Chris, and I got to meet him in Oklahoma City because there's a national park inside Oklahoma City. Long story short, I told Chris that I'm a U.S. history teacher. We talk about Theodore Roosevelt. We talk about the National Park Service. Do you have a story that's a little bit less popular that I can tell my students about Teddy Roosevelt? And he said, why, yes, I do. And here's the story. 1903, Teddy Roosevelt, as he was gaining an appreciation for conservation, he goes out west and he meets with a very famous conservationist named John Muir. John Muir takes Teddy Roosevelt off the grid and into the wilderness for 4 days. This is in 1903. This is the last time that the U.S. president has ever been off the grid, out of contact, away from civilization. Because think about all the things we don't have back then. Do we have phones? No. Do we have GPS? No. Do we even have cameras that can like record where you're at? No. Here's what Theodore Roosevelt does. He tells his Secret Service, hey, you guys, you stay there. I'm going to go hike this trail for a couple days, and I'll be back. Now, that might be normal for someone to do on a vacation or if they plan to take a few days off, right? But the President of the United States, usually we want to know where he is, right? He goes off the grid for 4 days. When he comes back, he has a very renewed energy for conservation. This is Roosevelt, and this is the guy that went hiking with him, John Muir. Roosevelt comes back with a renewed focus and a renewed emphasis on conservation, and it's all because of the 4-day hike that he took with this guy, John Muir. So kind of cool that my buddy Chris in Oklahoma City could tell me this story about Theodore Roosevelt. And think about that today. Imagine the president, whoever it is, imagine the president checking out for 4 days. Like, hey, nobody knows where he is. If he falls down a ravine, you don't know. If he jumps into a lake and breaks his leg and drowns, you don't know. That wouldn't happen today. Pretty cool that Teddy Roosevelt was able to do that.
So he became president because he was vice president. President got shot and killed.
Correct.
So,
Well, ask your question.
so why would he tell the people protecting him to stay behind and he'd be out there alone?
Yeah,
No,
it wouldn't happen today, Paige. You're exactly right. It just wouldn't happen today. That's who he was. He was a naturalist. Okay, he was an outdoorsman. He believed he could handle the nature by himself. But hey, anything can happen out there. You break a leg, you don't come back. You get mauled by a bear, you don't come back. So it's crazy to think about the president just going off the grid. Yeah, that's the whole point of the story. Let's get past this one. Okay. All right, number 2 is control of corporations. Conservation, control of corporations, AKA you might say trust busting. What's another word for trust? We talked about it. Think about the board game. Monopoly, yes. So he's the guy who's going to break up bad monopolies. He takes down Standard Oil. He makes them break into smaller companies so that John D. Rockefeller isn't controlling 90% of the oil in the country anymore. He takes on the rich man. Now, you may remember it was the muckrakers who kind of brought this to light. Was it Ida Tarbell who wrote about Standard Oil? So from her writing, he actually passes laws and signs laws that start to break up monopolies like Standard Oil. Here's something a little bit different than what I said earlier. There is a such thing as a good monopoly, a good trust. An example for that would be telephone companies. We don't need 50 telephone companies stringing wires across the country, right? If you have one good telephone company that's going to have fair prices and treat their workers well, Roosevelt was going to tolerate that. We don't need competition if it's going to, kind of actually complicate the industry. So he accepted wire companies being monopolized, but he broke up oil companies that were doing unethical practices. So the picture here, what does he have on the leash? Can you see? Good trust. What do you think? What do you think the leash? What's the word there?
They said restraint.
Yeah, restraint. If you're walking your dog, taking your dog out for a walk at nighttime. I know in Alma nobody uses leashes because it's all country dogs, but take your dog for a walk. You have him on a leash, you're controlling the dog, right? He was going to control good trusts. Bad trust, like Standard Oil, what's he going to do to it?
Kill it.
Kill it, right? He was known to be a big game hunter. Now, the story of the teddy bear, I'm going to tell you that right here at the end. But yeah, he was going to kill bad trusts, okay? So conservation, control of corporations. Here's the third one, consumer protection. Who's a consumer? A person that what?
Buys a product.
Buy something. You're all consumers, okay? Anytime you buy something, you're consuming it. What muckraker did we talk about that was really focused on helping consumers, especially of the meat industry? Oh, shoot. You're thinking about labor unions.
I can tell you the book.
What's the book?
The Jungle.
The Jungle. Okay, who's the author of the book? This is just a review. Who knows it? Who said me?
It's Upton Sinclair.
Boom, Upton Sinclair. Yes. So look at the picture here. You see that Theodore Roosevelt is also taking on the meat industry. He's going to pass things like the Meat Inspection Act, and he's going to create the Federal Drug Administration Act, FDA. FDA is big in the world today. You know the FDA. They regulate anything that you eat or drink or consume as a medicine. FDA. All started with Upton Sinclair in the Jungle. and it actually gets some teeth behind it with Teddy Roosevelt and the Meat Inspection Act and the FDA. FDA, right there, Food and Drug Administration, FDA. All right, that is Theodore Roosevelt at home. Okay, that is what he does for his country. Let's find out what he does elsewhere. Okay, there they are. If you missed them, the square deal, 3 parts, 3 C's. I owe me an answer as to why it's called a square. Conservation, control of corporations, and consumer protection. This is what he does for America at home. Let's find out what he does for America around the world. So flip back to the Philippine War. I'm sorry, that's on a different page. Back to the Philippine War. Here's what you should write. Write this down about the Philippine War. When we say war, that's a little bit inaccurate because it wasn't really a war as much as it was an insurrection. Insurrection means it's just a small group trying to rebel. What happened is that Filipinos fought alongside us during the Spanish-American War, right? They thought they were fighting for their own freedom. After the purchase of the Philippines is made, they expected that we would free them. Okay, we fought, so from a Filipino perspective, you can think, oh, we fought alongside the Americans. We all earned this freedom together. The Americans are going to give us freedom. That's not what happens. Once we purchased the Philippines, we did not give freedom to these Filipinos. We did not grant them independence. And if you expect something and then you don't get it, decide how does that make you feel? Mad. Angry right now. So what you got is a bunch of angry Filipinos. This is the result of the Philippine-American War, a bunch of angry Filipinos. Bunch of angry Filipinos. So if you're angry, you used to be fighting alongside these Americans. What are you going to do now instead?
Fight against
them. That's exactly what happened. So we have these Filipinos that used to be our buddies, probably a whole bunch of guns and equipment that we gave to them. They are now fighting against us. Now, I don't want to make some long-term legacy statement here. I probably agree. I probably think that we should have given them their freedom at the end of the war. That's not what happens. We end up holding on to the Philippines all the way until 1946. So the Philippines were won from Spain, which I already told you we had to buy it. The Filipinos that had fought alongside the U.S. thought they would gain their freedom. However, that's not what happens. U.S. did not grant independence. Instead, we make the Philippines a territory. And the war lasts for about 4 years, 1898 to 1902. The Philippines will remain a U.S. territory all the way until 1946, which if you follow the line of, the history of the story of the timeline, that's all the way up to the end of World War II. We will maintain Philippines as a territory all the way up until the end of World War II.
Why do we decide to make the other 3 countries territories, but we let Cuba just be a protector?
So, yeah, that's a great question. I don't have an in-depth answer. We wanted them to be a trade partner, not necessarily a part of us, and I probably can know you a better answer than that. Great question. That's a level three question. I owe me a 2 now.
What level am I?
Huh? 49. All right. All right. The Philippine War. I'm walking you through his imperialist policies. 1 was the Philippine War. 2 was the big stick theory. And this might make you recognize that I've been holding a big stick in my hands ever since we started our class period. Why do you think I have a big stick in my left hand?
That's not a stick, that's a bat.
This is a bat.
To maybe hit something?
So, okay, I can hit something. If I have a bat in my hand, who's gonna bow up at me? Austin, are you really? So the reason I'm holding a baseball bat in my hand is so that you can remember your weird U.S. history teacher held a baseball bat in his hand the whole class period to teach you about big stick diplomacy. Josiah, listen to this. One of Theodore Roosevelt's favorite phrases was this African proverb. It said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick, and you will go far." Jason, if I'm speaking softly to you, what kind of a relationship do you think we have? I'm not yelling. We're speaking softly. Unlike on the football field the other day. What kind of I'm speaking softly. We good? We're good? Yeah, Josiah, we're just shooting the breeze. I'm speaking softly. Like, we're probably telling some jokes. We're cutting up a little bit. We cool? Yeah. But Josiah, what do I have in my hand? And if Josiah makes me mad, what am I able to do? Fight. protect myself, do what I need to, right? So the point of the policy is try to make friends with everybody around you. Militarily, economically, socially, try to make friends with everyone around you. But let them know that if you need to flip the switch, you will. Speak softly, make friends, but let them know that you're carrying a big stick. And what this means is military and economic policy. Military and economic policy, right? Speak softly, carry a big stick, and you will go far. So this theory leads to two more things. This next thing is called the Roosevelt Corollary. Now, to fully understand what is a corollary, we got to understand that word in the first place. Who has ever dealt with a corollary? Corollary or corollary? All right, let me backtrack a bit. How about math class? You ever dealt with a theorem? What is a theorem? It's a problem.
It's what's used to solve a problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like a law for how you solve a problem, right? So listen, this is not math class, and I ain't gonna try to teach you any theorems. But a theorem is a law for solving a problem. A corollary is an addition to that law. So the Roosevelt Corollary, see that there, a corollary is added to the law. The Roosevelt Corollary is added to the Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine is the law. The Roosevelt Corollary is added to it. So to fully understand it, we got to remember what is the Monroe Doctrine. Now think about, I had this class split in two. We had this side, we had that side, we had a do not cross line. What was the point of the Monroe Doctrine?
To
Page.
it was to stay separated, so like
Yeah.
there wouldn't
Who
be.
is separated for starters? What two big chunks of the world? Europe and the United States. Yes, you could say East and West as well. So here's the big take. The Monroe Doctrine said, hey, Europe, you stay over there.
It was like
Right.
the line.
Hey, Europe, you stay over there. We'll stay over here. You deal with your European business. We'll deal with our American business. That is a very isolationist attitude, for starters. That's saying that we're not going to meddle with your affairs, and you're not going to meddle with our affairs, okay? That's a little bit different than imperialism. Imperialism being spreading yourself out all over the world. So what then is the Roosevelt Corollary? I see some of y'all still writing, so I want to make sure I'm not going too fast. You don't miss me. The Roosevelt Corollary says we will get involved in Latin American affairs if we need to. The situation was this. A lot of Latin American countries were in debt to European countries. France, England, Spain. The concern was that, hey, if Spain wants its money from Bolivia, it's going to come over here and start fighting Bolivia. Would we want Spain to come and fight Bolivia? Because that brings them back into the Western Hemisphere. So the Roosevelt Corollary says this. We will collect that debt and we will turn it over to you, okay? Listen, Spain, I'm not trying to steal your money. But if you need me to collect the debt, I will. You stay where you're at. I'm going to collect the debt. I'm going to turn it over to you. So it's saying that we will get involved in Latin American affairs to collect debts if necessary in order to make sure that those Europeans stay where they belong. So it added to the Monroe Doctrine in a way that was going to help keep the peace, designed to keep the peace. It was speaking softly. Hey, buddy, I'll collect the debt for you, okay? Because if you come over here, just remember I got a big stick. Speak softly, carry a big stick. This was his this was his philosophy. Speak softly and carry a big stick. All right, that's the Roosevelt Corollary. There's one more thing that relates to speak softly and carry a big stick. And it is the, look at the pencils. We good, everybody? It is the Panama Canal. Panama, located in South America. What does Panama, the country, look like? Anybody know?
I forgot. I haven't been there in a while.
Really skinny. I think I heard, right? Panama, the country, is really skinny. And I don't have my map down, but I am going to show you on the screen here in a second. The Panama Canal is this. It's a man-made waterway. Yep, we're almost done. It's a man-made waterway. It cut all the way through the country. It cut through 50 miles of land in order to create basically a fake river that connected the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. This canal was going to save a lot of time when traveling between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. instead of having to go all the way around that, all the way down the tip of South America, now you could just pay to go through the Panama Canal. And of course, by paying to go through the canal, you're giving money to Panama, or you're giving money to whoever controls the canal, and it's going to save you a lot of time. Time is money. People were willing to pay to go through the canal in order to save time while they were trading. So this is a picture of what it actually looks like, the canal. You can see that it's a very, very, very narrow strip of land that is actually cutting through Panama, but still is a huge undertaking because it was 51 miles of digging. Who's ever dug a hole in their backyard before? Anybody ever bury a dog or a cat, or you're just digging a hole for fun? Like, if you've ever dug 6 feet, how long did it take you to dig 6 feet?
About like 20 minutes.
Yeah, you sliding on me. It didn't take you 10 minutes to dig 6 feet. Probably took you a fair amount of time. Now imagine digging 51 miles through difficult geography. That's what the Panama Canal was. Here's why it matters. Before the Panama Canal, in order to sail from New York to San Francisco, you had to go around the tip of South America. And Anthony, how many miles is it? Anthony, how many miles is it?
13,000.
13,000 miles. On the other hand, Lily, how many miles is it to cut through the Panama Canal? 5,000 miles. All right, almost 2/3 less, way more than half less. A lot faster to go through the Panama Canal than it would be to go around the tip of South America.
Are we talking about Panama City or Panama?
We're talking, so okay. Panama is a country, it's right here. It's this very, very skinny Central American country. This is the best location in the world to do this. Even still, it was 50 miles worth of cutting. Panama City Beach, Anthony, is right here in Florida.
Yeah, my fault.
Panama, the country. Here is a picture of Theodore Roosevelt actually kind of working the crane. Now, he didn't get himself all that dirty. I think it's interesting he's wearing his white suit on this day. But this was one of his big policies. Hey, is Panama the United States? No. Why were we involved in digging the Panama Canal?
Because it's gonna make the trade better.
It's going to save us a lot of time and money. Panama never would have dug its own canal. They didn't have the ability. They didn't have the engineers. They didn't have the money. They didn't have the machines. We say, hey, Panama, if you let us dig this canal, it's going to help us. It's going to help you. And if you let us keep the canal for 100 years, we'll turn it over to you at the end of 100 years. So that was the deal. We will dig the canal. It is ours for 100 years. And then we'll turn it over to you.
Is that still a thing?
I'm about to tell you if that's still a thing. No. This is the chief engineer, the man who actually orchestrated the digging of the canal. Does anybody wonder where he went to college? Harvard. As a matter of fact, he is West Point class of 1880. So just another example of West Pointers impacting American history. Here's the Panama Canal today. So it was finished in 1914. The U.S. was going to control it for 100 years. Which would have taken us to the year 2014. However, through negotiations, that changed a little bit. It was actually President Jimmy Carter, agreed to give it up on December 31st, 1999. Basically, as the year turned to the year 2000, we gave it to Panama. So we didn't have it quite a full 100 years. We had it 86 years. In those 86 years, we made a lot of money. It is now fully given over to Panama, and Panama makes a lot of money over it. Here's what it looks like, right? So just imagine, this is your country, and we cut right through your country. If grandma lives to the north and you live to the south, that means you're going to have to take a bridge to get over the canal because your country literally got cut in half by this particular waterway. Here's how the canal actually works. Does anybody know? Anybody know how a canal works? No. It's what, Timothy?
Pressure.
Yeah, I'll hear pressure a little bit. Allison? Yeah, Allison says you fill up and then you let the water down. And those are called locks. So you would start right here at sea level. You enter this little elevator. Think of it like an elevator. It raises up to the next one. It raises up to the next one. It raises up to the next one. Then they did a really smart thing. They used this lake. You're going to sail all the way across the lake, which is in the middle of the country. Then you're going to do the reverse. You're going to go down, sail across. Go down, sail across, go down, sail across, and then you have crossed the whole country. So it takes a long time. Who can go through the Panama Canal?
Is it on my face?
You ever wondered if you could go through the Panama Canal? Any boat that pays can go through the Panama Canal. Whether you're the largest cruise ship, luxury liner, or you're a one-person kayak, sailboat, whatever. Anyone who pays can go through the Panama Canal, and hundreds of thousands of ships do per year. It costs, of course. You got to pay to go from one side to the other. That's how they make their money. But briefly show you this particular video that kind of shows you how it works, and then we'll be in closer to wrap up. Here's Coach Wilson again.
Boats, we got screen.
All right, I've done a lot of talking. Here's how the Panama Canal works. Enjoy. Suez Canal, but yes.
The process of transiting the Panama Canal is very similar for every vessel, from a sailboat to an enormous cruise ship. Each vessel accesses the locks through their gates to reach a height of 26 meters above sea level. A control house operator closes the gates to the locks and then opens the valves that control the water flow. It takes 8 minutes to fill the chamber to elevate the ship, which is kept in the center of its transit by locomotives. This operation is almost exactly the same as the 3 sets of locks in the Panama Canal. It takes between 8 and 10 hours to transit the Panama Canal from ocean to ocean. More than 10 million ships have done it since its opening.
There you go. And you too could cross the Panama Canal if you take a cruise ship or something like that. So, Theodore Roosevelt, the man. Let me round it out by kind of giving you his final legacy.
And when Mckinley was assassinated, he became our youngest president. These were busy, exciting years for America, now becoming a world power. The Panama Canal was started. Pure food legislation passed. Conservation furthered. The dynamic old rough rider steered the ship of state with a resolute, forceful hand. Long after his 7 years as president were over, he remained in the public spotlight, a respected and beloved figure.
So he was very outspoken. Hey, as a man, he was very outspoken. He was a campaigner, and that's what you saw. I hear your question. Give me a second. He was a campaigner, and that's what you saw from him there. He was one of the first to use video in campaigning. He'd give these really robust, just full of energy speeches, and his mustache and his spittle and his jowls, and he was a very robust campaigner. He was once shot before he was about to give a speech, and here's the story of that. So he gets off the train in Milwaukee. He steps out, and someone, like they always do, they're angry at the president for something, right? This guy shoots him in the chest. He is struck by a bullet in the chest. It strikes him in the breast pocket where he had his manuscript for his speech. He pulls out the manuscript for his speech. He kind of shakes it out. It was so thick. He was going to give a 90-minute speech. It was so thick that it literally stopped the bullet. He goes to the podium. He addresses the crowd, and he says, I don't know if you all realize what just happened. I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose. So he kind of had this nickname. His lifetime nickname was that he's a bull moose. What is a bull moose, Anthony? A big moose. Like the biggest of creatures. Yeah. So he's saying it takes more than a bullet to kill a bull moose. And literally, he gave his 90-minute speech after having just been shot. He was not punctured. His flesh was not punctured. He did have broken ribs from the impact, but it was not a fatal shot. He didn't go to the hospital. He gave his speech. I know, Anthony, I can't believe it either. He gave his speech. I want to give you the contrast here. Abraham Lincoln, 272 words, Gettysburg Address. Teddy Roosevelt, 90 minutes long. His manuscript is fat enough to even stop a bullet. So that just adds to the legacy. Hey, you cannot believe me if you want. One more for you. How do you probably really know about Teddy Roosevelt? If you didn't know anything else before today's class, what have you heard about Teddy Roosevelt before? Teddy Roosevelt is the namesake of the teddy bear, and I'm going to tell you this story now. After he was president, this is how I'll close it out, okay? After he was president, he went on a hunting trip to Mississippi. He was known as a big game hunter, okay? He shot big animals all around the world, African safaris, moose, right? So he was not someone that was not willing to shoot an animal. He was a big game hunter. On this particular hunting trip, they had not had any success yet. And the people that are leading the trip they're starting to be a little embarrassed that they haven't given the former president, a good show. They haven't given him any animals to shoot at. So what they do, they hear a bear cub kind of off in the woods. They go, they tackle, they wrestle this bear cub to the ground. They tie it up. They tie it to a tree, and they bring him over. They say, hey, Mr. President, we have a bear that you can shoot because we want to make sure that you actually get something out of this hunting trip. President Roosevelt, former President Roosevelt, being a sportsman, he says, I will not shoot a living creature that is tied to a tree. That is not sportsmanlike. That is not what I'm going to do. Well, there were people from the press, the media on this trip. And once that story starts to get out, it gets told like this, that Teddy Roosevelt would not shoot the bear cub. It kind of adds to his legacy, right? Overall adds to his legacy. Well, there's a toy maker in New York City, a man and his wife, they have this business, they make stuffed animals. They think that, hey, just like business people do, how can I make more money? They think, hey, if we make a stuffed bear and we name it after Roosevelt, I bet that thing would sell. I bet we could make a lot of money off of that. So they write to the president asking for permission to use his name. Mr. President, can we call our bear the Teddy's bear? He says, you know what, sure. I doubt you're going to make any money off of a teddy bear. Go ahead. Well, as you all know, the end of the story is that the teddy bear becomes very popular. In fact, Mr. Roosevelt was wrong, and they did make a lot of money off of the name Teddy's bear. Not teddy bear, like you guys know it.
Why is it
actually,
called Teddy?
it was called Teddy's bear. And this, I was trying to bring some extra into the classroom for you. This is the teddy bear that was in my bassinet the day I was born in Oklahoma. So this thing's older than I am. It had the strings on it so I could stroke it as a child or something.
Whoa.
This is my teddy bear. Everybody had a teddy bear. Everybody remembers a teddy bear. This is my teddy bear from my grown up years. And now you know more about the teddy bear. I always say something wrong. There's always one word somewhere. So, hey, I hope you know more today than you did when you walked in. I hope you learned something along the way. I want to put this screen back up. Don't check out on me. We still got 5 minutes. I'm gonna put this screen back up. This is what's due on Wednesday. Tomorrow's a review day. Okay, so tomorrow, come ready to review. Wednesday is the exam day. It is. It's not moving just because we missed 2 days of class. If you are missing any of these items, Allison's doing a good thing by getting it for herself. If you're missing any of these items, let me know. Also, the bonus point opportunity has been posted to Google Classroom. You can do it or not. No skin off my nose. But hey, you do have to actually watch the video. You can't do the bonus points if you don't watch the videos. So, some questions. I'm here for it. If you have papers you need, let me know. All of that. What's up? That is. Read this article. What's up? Okay. Hey, you can get your phones, but take your seat because we still got 5 minutes. Anybody else need a scavenger hunt or a study guide? Soraya, your voice sounds like mine's about to sound.